In this video, you're going to start building out the Indecision app. We're going to create a new folder for the project. We're going to add some basic stuff inside of there, like our index.html file, and we're going to set up a development web server. We're going to install a little utility that's actually going to allow us to serve up those local assets, things like our HTML files, our JavaScript files, there'll be quite a few, and our CSS style files. We'll then have a localhost URL that we can visit to actually view the application. Step one is to create a place for all of our project code. I'm going to do this via the Finder. On the desktop, I'm going to make a brand new folder, and we can call this one something like React Course Projects. And in here, I'll add a subfolder for all of the projects that we'll actually build together. We're going to kick things off with our first project, the Indecision app. Indecision app. This is where all of the code for the Indecision app is going to live. It's the folder that we're going to run commands from in the command line, and it's the folder that we're going to crack open inside of our editor. I'm going to go ahead and open up Visual Studio Code right now and open up that brand new folder. On the desktop, we have React Course Projects, and we have the Indecision app. I recommend noting the keyboard shortcut for File Open so you can quickly open up all of the folders that you're going to be using. Now, obviously, we have no files or folders inside of here. That is perfectly fine. We'll get started with that in just a couple of minutes. The next thing I want to do is crack open the terminal. And inside of the terminal, we're going to go ahead and navigate into the Indecision app folder because that's where we want to run all of our commands from. And we're going to do that using cd. Now, depending on where you are, you can always use cd tilde to navigate back to your user directory, and I created my folder on the desktop, so I'll navigate into the desktop. From here, I can use ls on OS X or Linux, or dir on Windows to view all of the contents, and I have my React Course Projects folder. I'm going to use cd again to go into React Course Projects /Indecision app. Now you can see that we're running all of our commands from the Indecision app directory, and that's really important. Make sure that you have navigated into your folder. If you already have a place on your machine where you store your code, maybe you stored it there instead, that's perfectly fine. Just make sure you do have the correct location opened up for the editor and for the terminal. And this is the basic window structure we'll be sticking with throughout the course. I'm going to have Chrome open, I'm going to have a terminal window open, and I'm going to have the editor open. These are going to stay open, and I'm not going to go through the process of reopening them in every single video. I'm going to assume that you already have them open. Now, what we're going to do is create a public folder inside of Indecision app. We can do that right now. And the public folder, it's going to contain all of the assets that we actually want to serve up. And we're going to be building a web app. So we're going to start with a single file, index.html. This is going to be a dead simple HTML file that we'll be expanding on throughout the course. For now, though, we're going to go with a bare bones HTML boilerplate page. You'll be writing almost no HTML in the course. In the next video, you'll learn how we're going to create our templates for React outside of HTML, but we do need a very basic document to kick things off. Right here, we'll start with our doc type. That is the $! exclamation mark doc type. And this is going to let us tell the browser what version of HTML we want to use. And we're going to type HTML, which is the HTML5 document version. Then we're going to move on to the actual markup, starting off with the HTML tag, which we will open and close. Inside of here, we're going to add the usual suspects, head and body, and we'll keep things very simple. Now, if you are using an editor, you should be able to type head and tab to autocomplete that tag. If you're not seeing that autocomplete feature, I recommend installing the Emmet plugin for your editor. So most editors have this built in. If your editor doesn't, there is a category of plugin called Emmet, which is where the auto completion for HTML comes in. As I mentioned, we're going to be writing maybe 4 more lines, so it's not really a big deal. Down below head, we're going to add body, and this is where the rendered markup will live. And for the moment, we're just going to type some text. This is my HTML file. Perfect. The whole goal is to just get this showing up in the browser. Now in the head, we're going to add 2 things. First up is a meta tag right here. Meta And this is going to allow us to define the one thing we have to define, our character set. Now the character set is going to get set equal to UTF-8, like it always is. And this is going to make sure the correct encoding is used when your web app is viewed in the browser. Now, most modern browsers have it set to UTF-8 by default, but it's nice to keep this in place for a little cross-browser compatibility. Last thing, title, right here. We're going to open and close a title tag, and we're going to type out the title, the thing we want to have shown in the browser tab, and this one is going to be Indecision App. Perfect. Now the basics of HTML, CSS, and JavaScript were a requirement for this course, so all of this should look familiar. Maybe you forgot the details and that's fine, but none of this should be earth-shattering. Let's go ahead and save index.html. I'm getting a little formatting. We'll talk about my editor settings a little bit later. For now, the format does not matter. The goal from here is to get this served up. We want to serve up the public folder so we can view our web page in the browser. And we're going to do that by running a few commands from the command line. We're going to be installing the module called Live Server. It's a great little development web server. It's going to allow us to serve up a folder like our public folder, and it comes with some nice features like live reload. So as we change our website's assets, the website will automatically refresh in the browser. We're going to be using Live Server for now, and later on we'll look at more advanced techniques using tools like Express for production and the Webpack dev server for development. But for now, Live Server is a bare bones, no configuration web server that's going to allow us to get up and running quickly. So we're going to install it using Yarn. Now, we're going to be installing something globally. So you remember we installed Yarn with npm and we used that G flag. What we're going to do here is very similar. So the goal is to install a tool that we're going to be able to access from the command line. So we're going to use Yarn global add followed by the module name. This one is called live-server. This is going to install Live Server. Add means install, and it's going to install it globally. We can go ahead and run this command, and that'll give us access to a new command right from the command line. This one is live-server. We can run it with the V flag to make sure it installed correctly. Right here, I have the version installed, Live Server 1.2.0. Hey, Andrew from the future with a quick update. Some students have reported that after installing the module globally, they were not able to run the command and actually see the live server version print. So what I want to do in this quick little update is talk about another command you can run to get the job done correctly. So the problem has to do with how Yarn globally installs modules. It doesn't always add the location to the path, which means that when we try to use it from the terminal, it fails. So what we're going to do instead is use npm to install things globally. Now, if the command did work and you did see the live server version printing, you do not have to run any of the commands I'm going to run in this little update portion of the video. If it failed, you do want to run these commands and make sure that you actually get live server installed. Now, global modules make up a very small part of this course. We'll actually be uninstalling them later, so don't worry too much. We're just going to run npm install. With the G flag, this installs it globally, and we're going to be installing live-server. Now we can go ahead and actually run this one. That's going to go through the installation process. And once it's complete, we should be able to run live server from the terminal without getting any issues. So regardless of which way worked, whether it was Yarn or npm, in the end of the day, all that's important is that live server with the V flag prints the live server version installed. Hopefully you are seeing that. If you're not, do open up a question in the Q&A and we'll work to get you unstuck. All right, that is it for this quick update. Thanks for bearing with me. Now that we have this installed, we can go ahead and actually serve up our public directory. I'm going to clear the terminal output and we're going to use live server. You use live-server followed by the folder. In this case, the folder is public. Now, this is why it's really important to make sure you're running the command from the correct folder. Here, I'm running the command from the Indecision app folder. The Indecision app folder has a public folder inside of it. That's the only way this is actually going to work. So make sure you've navigated to the correct place. I'm going to run the command. It's automatically going to open up the little server in the browser. And right here, we have our HTML file. We have this is my HTML file showing up. We have our title, Indecision app. Everything is working as expected. Now you'll also notice I have this little purple circle. This is the fav icon. This is cached from when I previously worked on an application on this URL. You're not going to see this, and that's fine. We'll worry about setting all of that up later. For now, it's just important that you're seeing this is my HTML file printing to the screen. If you are, that means the development server is up and running and you're ready to continue on to the next video where you're actually going to use React for the very first time. I'm real excited to get to it. Let's take just a quick second to recap what we did here. In this video, we started off by creating our file and folder structure. I have a folder on my desktop called React Course Projects. In here, I'm going to put all of my projects. In this case, we just have one Indecision app. We actually added some stuff to Indecision app, which we can see over inside of Visual Studio Code. Right here, we added some awesome stuff. We have our public folder, which is currently getting served up, and we have our index.html file. If I make a change to this file, like swapping out the exclamation mark for a period, and I save the file, the browser is automatically going to refresh in the background because we're using that great little live server utility. Now we installed live server over inside of the terminal, and then we actually used it with this command, live server public. I'm going to leave this command running for basically the rest of the section. That's going to allow us to actually view our application inside of the browser. This is the first video where we actually wrote some code, so I do want to make you aware that you can download the application in its current state via the lecture resources for each lecture. So if you go ahead and download the lecture resources for this lecture, you're going to get a zip folder. In that zip folder, you're going to get my Indecision app with the public directory and the index.html file. The downloads are available for every lecture where we actually write some code, which is pretty much every single lecture except a few. So if you do get stuck or something's not working as expected, you always have access to the correct code via those lecture resources. All right, I'll see you in the next one.